Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at the guns of the Cold War. We're looking at the most significant firearms that were used after the adoption of the NATO standardization 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO. There were two major rifles that were used throughout the free world. We're looking at four rifles here. One is the most prolific that there was, the FN FAL, then the G3, the M14, and we're going to talk a little bit about the AR10 as well, because the AR10 never had the opportunity, but it was very significant in its development. So the first rifle we're going to look at is probably the most significant of all, the FN FAL. The FN FAL was called the right arm of the free world because it was used by over 90 countries. It was licensed to be manufactured in at least 11 countries. And another thing that's significant about this rifle, this was supposed to be the U.S. service rifle when the 7.62 NATO cartridge was adopted, because this was an excellent rifle. This was an advanced rifle. Now, the ones that were tested for the U.S. military had wooden stocks versus the polymer on here. But what we have here is a true battle rifle. We don't want to call this an assault rifle because this is not an intermediate caliber. This is 7.62 NATO, so it's a full bore rifle. Looking at some of the features that made this rifle as good as it was: 20-round detachable box magazine. You had a short stroke tappet piston system on the top. Now, on the front of here, you did have an adjustable gas valve. Now, depending on your outlook, whether that's a good idea or not, basically, if a soldier would have this one, prior to them going out on their mission or wherever area they were in, they would adjust the gas system according to the temperature and the ambient temperature and the ammunition that they had. So they would adjust that so this rifle was working perfectly. It was not overgassed. It was working properly. The only problem with that is if this is set up, say, in 95-degree weather during the summertime, and all of a sudden you go into the negative weather in the wintertime, you would have to readjust your gas valve because of the lower port pressures. Why, a lot of military rifles, it's better not to have fully adjustable gas systems just because of that fact. What happens most of the time, soldiers will just look at this and they'll go, well, if I open it all the way up, it'll work all the time. And of course, what you're doing is you're beating the hell out of the rifle when that happens. We also have a bipod that's on here as well. And looking at the left-hand side, we have a safety. Now, again, this is still sort of World War II era. It's not as more modern as we see right now, but you had a safe, semi, and automatic. Now, most of these rifles were issued in a selective fire capacity, but there were also countries that offered them only in semi-automatic. Now, for as far as controllability on fully automatic, overall, I don't want to say this was controllable, but for as far as all the rifles that you're going to be talking about here, this is probably one of the most controllable ones on fully automatic. And the reason being is because it was adjustable gas system. You were able to adjust that gas system down to make this a little bit more controllable. But still, a full power battle cartridge, being able to get out suppressive fire, it did not do a very good job. But these were designed for past World War II. It was designed for open plains, longer range shots, basically what we saw during World War II, where you had options to go out to 500 to 1,000 yards. This was prior to the Vietnam War when this was adopted. The Vietnam War changed a lot for as far as the way that we did things. However, if we also need to take a look at the time period too, when NATO adopted the 7.62 by 51 millimeter cartridge. That was done because after World War II, all the NATO countries were using something different. The U.S. was 30-06. You had 7.62 by 63, 30-06. You had the 6.5s. You had all different calibers throughout Europe that were being used. So there's a standardization on one for all the NATO countries. And again, that was 7.62. It was designed for wars such as World War II. So this is where a lot of these types of rifles came from. Now, the FAL, again, it was used by the British. This was actually used in the Vietnam War by the Australians as well. So it did see some combat in Vietnam. However, most of the Australians who were using it decided to go with the M16 at the time because, again, this was not the rifle for the Vietnam War. This was not a rifle for close quarter battle. This was strictly one for longer range shots. Heavy rifle, we're going to go over some more of the characteristics of this after I go through each of these individual rifles. But again, you're looking at over 7 million of these were produced in more than 11 countries who produced them. And over 90 countries had used it. So I would probably say the FAL is probably the most significant. You look at the iron sights. The iron sights you have on this are also combat sights. These are not target sights. These are meant to be adjusted once and then left alone. You do have an elevation up and down, but your windage and everything as it's done, this is meant to be a battle rifle. It's zeroed and it's left as such. The next and probably significant rifle would be the H&K G3. Now, there's some interesting things about this particular rifle because when Germany, after World War II, was looking to adopt their 7.62 millimeter rifle, their initial thoughts were they wanted the FAL. Well, they went to Belgium and they wanted to talk to them about getting licensed to manufacture the FAL. Well, The Belgians were still a little pissed off about World War II being invaded by Germany. And they basically were saying, if you want to buy the guns from us, that's fine, but we will not give you the right star guns so you can manufacture them in Germany. So, again, Germany wanted to manufacture their own weapons in-house. So they went to the Setme design, which were done by German designers who were post-World War II. If you take a look at this rifle, you can see a similarity to the Sturmgewehr for as far as its appearance. However, this system here, unlike the FAL, did not utilize a short-stroke type of piston gas system. It used a roller delay system. Now, the roller delay system gives you a significantly more recoil, in my opinion, than the gas-operated system. So you had a lot more recoil. This was a lighter weight rifle. This one was also very, very popular, with over 7 million produced. And it was used in 79 countries. So yeah, not quite as popular as the FAL, but it was quite popular. Manufactured in 13 countries as well. They were licensed by H&K. So these two are probably the most significant of the two. Now, as far as shooting was concerned, you did have a combat sight. You had a diopter type sight in the rear, a front sight post in the front. Again, this was adjustable for battle sight 0. It was not meant to be fine-tuned to be a precision sniper rifle. These were actually battle rifles. Now, these on fully automatic were brutal. These things here, because of the way that the locking system was and the way it operated, this had a significant amount of recoil in the 7.62 by 51 cartridge. I've had the opportunity to shoot these many times on fully automatic, both here in the United States and overseas. I think one of the last times I shot one of these on full auto was over in Saudi Arabia, because those guys had them over there. And again, the recoil was relatively heavy. These things also liked high power ammunition as well. The rifle, again, the ones made in Germany were the most coveted. But this was very, very quickly replaced in many countries with the adoption of the 5.56, but very, very significant seen in battles throughout the world. Now, the United States, the most powerful country in the world, came up with this. So basically what we have here is the same rifle that we had during World War II with a 20-round magazine, selective fire, and was very, very uncontrollable on fully automatic. Now, if you look at the two rifles that were popular, you can definitely see the difference. You saw modern polymers, you saw pistol grips, you saw modern sights. The sights on here were designed for basically the Marine Corps, who had fully adjustable, finely adjustable real sights that were great on the rifle range, but at the actual battlefield, they were pretty much useless. You had a wooden stock on here that would swell in humidity jungle environments. It would very easily break and would splinter. You had a very awkward type magazine release on here compared to the other two rifles. It was a lot longer. This rifle here, however, was not nearly as successful. You're looking at 1.3 million of these ever produced. This was the shortest living rifle in American history for the U.S. military, only 6 years of service. It was used in 32 countries. However, those 32 countries, its use was very, very, very limited. It was used basically as DMR-type rifles. The only country really to ever produce it in any kind of numbers was Taiwan. They adopted it, but again, it was replaced by the M16 with Taiwan as well. Now, many of you are going to say, well, it's still in use today. It's still in use today due to the fact that during the global war on terror, there was a shortage of 7.62 millimeter rifles. They couldn't get enough M14s in service. So they pulled out what they had, which were M14s that were basically in war stock, and they put them into service because this is what they had. It wasn't because this was a great rifle or a highly accurized rifle. It's because that's what they had for longer range shooting for use, especially in Afghanistan. So they did try to overwork these things, get better stocks for them, but overall the accuracy of these things was very dependent on having a full-time gunsmith to keep everything working. This was the least successful of anything that was in the Cold War. And again, most of the rifles that were manufactured for these were destroyed. There were several that were in war stock, and the ones that did go to foreign countries were through foreign military sales or foreign military aid. And it was even difficult at that because nobody wanted these things. So we had a hard enough time even giving these away. Probably one of the largest supply of these was in Vietnam, because many of these were left in Vietnam after the United States left. They weren't brought back. But the ones that were in war stock, again, they were put in war stock. They tried to get rid of them through foreign military sales, foreign military aid. They did give them to a lot of those countries that you saw using these. Again, those 32 countries, most of these were given. They were given out of our war stock because we didn't want them, and nobody else did either. Again, that's why most of them were destroyed. So this is certainly, I would say, the least popular of the ones that were used during the Cold War. The rifle that we have here is the AR10, which is actually the BRN10. Of course, I don't have an original AR10, but this is very similar, so we're going to get the idea of it. Now, the reason why I talk about this is because at the time the M14 was tested, Armalite put this into the mix. Now, there was a couple problems. This was the most advanced rifle that was available in the world at that time. In fact, Armalite told it as tomorrow's rifle today. The problem with it was just too advanced. All the rifles that you see here, steel and wood, steel with some polymer, conventional rifles, short stroke pistons, long stroke pistons, were delayed. The rifle that you see here was completely different. It was the use of aluminum receivers. It was the use of polymer stocks. The rifle was significantly lighter, and the rifle was significantly more accurate than anything that you see here as well. However, there's a couple factors that went into it. The M14 was manufactured by the U.S. military in U.S. government arsenals. So there was a reason why the U.S. government wanted that. They didn't want a gun that was developed by somebody that was private. Also, the fact was this technology was too new. The thought of using polymers and aluminums, it never had been done before. So this newer aerospace type weapon, utilizing new materials that were used in the aerospace industry versus traditional steel and wood that were used on these other rifles. Now, unfortunately, there's only about 9,900 of these produced. There was 14 countries that had purchased them. Most of them were very, very small numbers. The Portuguese military did use them actually in combat. They were very, very well liked. Recoil on here was a lot heavier due to the fact that the rifle was a lighter rifle. However, this rifle was in line. Now, also, as far as operating system was concerned, this was a revolutionary operating system as well. It was the internal piston. Again, you're not going to hear me say direct impingement because that's the wrong term. It's not direct impingement. It's an internal piston. There was no operating rod. These worked very well in dirty environments due to the fact that the way it was designed, there was no way to get dirt into it. So it kept it clean by mechanical means, by keeping everything closed up versus what you see on the M14, for instance, where you had the entire assembly is open on the rear, where if dirt got into that, you would get dirt into your system and your trigger mechanism, and it would cause it to fail. Both of these rifles here also, they're very good at working in dirty conditions because, again, they're also designed to keep dirt out of them. So, again, you're seeing these three rifles are advanced rifles. They were far better rifles than what the United States put out, but again, you're looking at tradition here versus what was better. This was the rifle, the FAL was rifle that was supposed to be our service rifle, our NATO rifle. It should have been. But, again, you had forces at the Army who wanted to protect their interests to keep the U.S. government arsenals going and building this rifle over here. But, again, the AR10 was a rifle that I definitely wanted to bring out because, again, this should have been the U.S. service rifle. This was the most advanced rifle that there was at the time. But again, when you're dealing with military politics, it's not about often what is best for the U.S. soldier. It's about what is best for people's careers and so on and so forth, which is also what plagued the M16 in Vietnam, which caused the initial problems. Was again, it was the good old boy network. What people wanted to keep their jobs and their ranks to keep these arsenals going, even at the cost of the U.S. military. So if we want to take a little bit more look at these things in general. So when you look at weights concerned, the FAL's coming in about 9.4 pounds. The G3 is 9.6 pounds. The M14 at 9.2. The AR10 was a light 6.8. So overall, in weight was concerned, you all had rifles that were around the 9-pound mark, the three that were actually used. However, the AR10 was significantly lighter. Now, the overall length, you're looking at 43 inches on the FAL, 40.4 inches on the G3, 44.3 on the M14, and 41.25 on the AR10. Again, you have 44 inches on the M14 because you have a longer barrel. And again, I'll say forever, the way the sights were set up on this thing was designed to be a precision rifle, a marksman rifle on a Marine Corps range for shooting it out at 400 or 500 yards. For as far as its practicality for use in combat, the fully adjustable sights were not a good thing. As you can see from the rifles that were successful, these sights were not what you would call fully adjustable. They were battle sight zeroed. There wasn't a lot of adjustment in them, so you would keep them in a certain zero. Receiver materials. Now, all three of the rifles that you see here are all making use of modern steel receivers. Now, you're looking at forgings on the FAL. You're also looking at stamp parts on the FAL. You're looking at the G3. You're looking at stamped sheet metal. M14, a gigantic piece of milled steel. And, of course, you look at the AR10, you're looking at aluminum forgings. So you're looking at significantly less weight in the aluminum. Now, all three of these rifles here, for as far as corrosion is concerned, the steel corrodes at a much higher rate than the aluminum does, which is something that's been seen. Type of fire. Now, all three of these rifles came in a select fire mode. However, M14 as anybody knows who's ever shot one FAL, it is totally uncontrollable on fully automatic unless you are extremely highly trained. It works very poor in meeting engagements, and I talk about that more when we start talking about the Vietnam War in various videos, where it shows why this was a poor rifle for the Vietnam War. These other two, again, were selective fire as well. You had a lot of recoil with the G3. The FAL, again, you were able to dial that gas down, so you had a little bit less recoil. Now, stock materials. The FAL came in both wood and polymer. The one you see here has got the polymer stocks on here. The polymer stocks were far better because, again, for as far as the elements was concerned, the polymer didn't care about wet, damp, humidity, ice, heat. It didn't have any issues with that at all. Wood, on the other hand, wood will swell, wood will crack easy. It's not nearly as durable as some of the modern polymers. The G3, this G3 is the H&K configuration. It has the heavier, more the heavy-duty stocks on it. This also came in wood. It also came in some lighter weight polymer stocks as well. I tend to prefer this one. So you had several different options that you had for both these rifles, both wood and polymer. M14. Big chunk of wood, basically that, again, it was found in human environments where it would swell, it would crack easy. Under extreme firing conditions, they would catch on fire. The wood was just not as durable as the polymer. Now you look at the AR10. Okay, now we have aluminum receivers. We have which dissipate heat a lot better than the steel. You had the polymer stocks that were on there. Again, those were the earliest of the polymer. They were quite durable, but they weren't more refined until the development of the M16A2. But they were still under normal combat conditions. It was better. Locking systems. Now, all these had a little bit different of a locking system. You look at the FAL, you have more of a drop type bolt on there. You have a roller delay system on the G3. You have a standard two-lug locking system on rotating bolt on the M14, and then on the M16 you have the multi-lug rotating bolt that's on there. Another feature is locking back on the last shot. That was another thing that I'm particularly fond of. The FAL, the M14, and the AR10 do that. The G3 on the last shot goes home, so unless you can feel the difference or you're counting, you're going to hear a click when that thing is empty. Again, we're looking at numbers of produced. The FAL and the G3, again, these were the most predominant rifles of the Cold War. You're looking at both of them are roughly 7 million. Again, you're looking at numerous countries that manufacture these under license. M14, 1.3 million. Most of them were destroyed. U.S. couldn't even give them away because the rifle was obsolete right at the onset of the Vietnam War. And there's another thing I do want to talk about when we talk about NATO versus Warsaw Pact during the Cold War. You know, the NATO countries did not learn from the Germans. They did not learn about the use of intermediate caliber rifles. The Russians did. So the Warsaw Pact countries went with the intermediate caliber AK-47, which was a much more controllable cartridge on fully automatic. It was much better in meeting engagements and ambush than these. And it was more practical because after World War II, the long-range warfare was over with. You're looking at more close quarters. You were looking at massive artillery bombardments, and then you were looking at overwhelming with mechanized infantry, where you were basically right on top of your enemy, well within 100 yards. These rifles were totally impractical for that purpose, for the new type of warfare. As far as I'm concerned, the use of this caliber and these rifles during the Cold War, we were behind the Warsaw Pact on firepower. And we wouldn't see that really until the Vietnam War, when this went up against an AK-47, and it was found that this rifle could not win a battle against an AK-47. You could not put down in an ambush. You couldn't put down the suppressed fire with one of these because it was uncontrollable. And the weight, being able to get it around, moving this thing in the jungle, this was absolutely the wrong weapon for the Vietnam War and for modern warfare. So if you look at modern times today, you were looking at the use of intermediate calibers, 5.56, 7.62 by 39, 5.45. The calibers you see here, the full-power battle rifles, are generally for belt-fed machine guns, general-purpose machine guns, DMR, and sniper rifles. And at that, you're starting to see even the 6.5 Creedmoor. So the Cold War, we as NATO were behind the Warsaw Pact in having weapons that were longer range, they were heavy, they were more impractical for the modern warfare. You look at the rifles that were used; they were excellent rifles. There's certainly no question about that. We had better weapons available to the U.S. military at the time, the AR10, but because of the politics that went around with it, they got this. And again, this, which proved to be the shortest-lived U.S. service rifle in history. Very few of them that were used. Again, as I said, you still see them in use today. And again, it's not because they were that great of a rifle. It's because they were available in war stock when we needed 7.62 rifles. The far more was desired to have a bolt-action type rifle or an SR-25 M14 type rifle, but they couldn't produce enough of those. That's where these things came from. So, as the Cold War, which was my favorite, again, yeah, I'm an AR10 fan. I felt that should have been the U.S. service rifle, but it wasn't. Overall, looking at the three of these, M14 is completely out because, again, I said that was, as far as I'm concerned, that's not in the same league as these for as far as practical use, durability, reliability, and use as a battle rifle. So really it's going to come down to the two of these, which one I like best. The one I like best, it would be the FAL. Reason being is I like the sight radius. I like the lighter recoil due to the fact that you can use the adjustable gas system. I like being able to have a bolt lock back in the last shot. I like having the location of the charging handle more close to the rear. I like having a magazine release catch. The magazines, on the other hand, the magazines are not that great. One of the unique aspects of the FAL rifle is your feed lips are in the magazine. They're not actually, it doesn't actually feed from like the feed ramps. It's done from the magazine. So the magazines were not as good. However, if you look at the G3 magazines, the steel magazines, they were certainly bomb-proof, but most of the time they were issued with aluminum magazines as well. So the magazines were pretty much equal. Trigger. The trigger I felt on the FAL was much nicer. The trigger on the G3 is a lot more spongy. I don't feel it's nearly as good. Weight and everything, these things are comparable in that. This is a little bit longer, so you get more velocity out of it. But overall, in my opinion, the king of the Cold War for the NATO countries, I feel, was the FN FAL. So I hope you guys did enjoy my little take on the Cold War. Again, I certainly have my opinions, for as far as what the U.S. had done versus what the rest of the world has done. I certainly feel we would have been better off doing what we were supposed to and adopting the FAL as our service rifle over the M14. But as you can see from the world, 1.3 million versus 7 million of each of these. These were far more acceptable because, again, they were better rifles. They were more durable, more reliable. They were easier to handle. They were more comfortable to handle. The recoil was certainly better than what you had on the M14. That's why these two were the king of the Cold War. But in my opinion, this was the way to go. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share.